And we're starting this campaign called Get Ready, just to help us become more proactive during these later chapters of life, so that we can stay growing and changing and be prepared and relax, because we're so prepared that that we feel like we can relax in this life. We are so honored to welcome Pete Dickenson to talk to us about exercising as we age and staying strong. I know that, Pete, you've helped me get through one of my shoulder injuries because I was trying to lift a big piece of sheet metal over the top of my head. And so without any further ado, Pete, I'll let you introduce yourself a little bit further. I know a lot of people are already familiar with you, but for anyone watching who isn't, and away we go.
Great. Well, this will be a lot like preaching to the choir, as I know a lot of you, and some are new. So I'm Pete Dickenson. I'm a physical therapist associated with Winthrop Physical Therapy and Fitness. And then part of my other jobs is I also travel with some of our national sports teams, with our U.S. cross country team and U.S. Paranordic team. And so I get to see kind of the entire end of the spectrum. But probably one of the most things I'm proud about is 20 years ago, we started an exercise class at the gym. It was self-named as OPEC, Old People's Exercise Class, OPEC. And that was designed to address many of the things I'm going to talk about today, but really to maintain our independence as we get older. Because strength is kind of the essential element to that, and also aerobic activity. And if we can maintain that and work around the many injuries that we accumulate as we get older, that can really help our independence, because we want to go strong to the very end. And there's an end for all of us, but we want to keep our independence going for as long as possible. And thankfully, we have Methow at home to help us with all the myriad issues that requires. So my hope is that I can be a proponent for activity, give you some ideas. We'll have an opportunity to circle back, because it's really individual when we get to our chronological situation in our older years. And we all have our individual injuries we're working around. And that's the thing maybe we'll try and touch on, is that we have injuries we want to treat, and then injuries we need to kind of work with that aren't going to go away. And I know many of you have been, you have to kind of work through that, but you can still be successful with that and still have quite an active life. So let's go over just the general benefits of exercise. And we're all always looking for that magic pill, that diet, that elixir, that certain something that will fix all that ails us. And I'm here to tell you, it's exercise. And so let's go over all the benefits, and then we'll drill down into both aerobic and strength training, just in general. And then maybe I've got my whole exercise setup over here for you, a chair, and maybe we can go over some simple but robust things to do, and then maybe that'll further some additional discussion. Exercise. So cardiovascular for our heart is really important. A lot of things can go wrong with our heart, and many of us might be on some medications for that. But with exercise, we can decrease our blood pressure. We can decrease the occurrence of coronary artery disease, the plugging up of the arteries, improve our cholesterol. So it has, for our central pump, it makes it work and keeps it operating at peak efficiency. And that's so important. Many of us have diabetes, and exercise can improve your glycemic control and your insulin sensitivity. So it's many people can actually get off their meds with exercise. Of course, not everyone, but it can be a huge help for that. It's the lack of exercise that can contribute to diabetes. Osteoporosis, there may be some strong genetic influences with some of these things, but it can decrease with good exercise. It can decrease the fracture occurrence in the hip and the vertebra. And big thing is decrease our risk of falling. I don't know if any of you guys have noticed this, but bad things happen when I fall. I just don't bounce the way I used to. So keeping our strength up is key for that primary thing of decreasing the risk of falling. We'll go over some balance things that you can do for that. Osteoarthritis, the wearing away of the joints and the pain involved with that. Exercise can help support the joints. Your muscles are the shock absorbers for your joints. So even though your joint may be wearing out, if you can increase the strength around it, you're going to shield it from stress and strain and get more function out of it. In fact, you can add function. So where walking downhill or getting up out of a chair might have been difficult, that can be improved with exercise. And then we call it neuropsychological health, like your memory. Your memory can be improved with exercise. Exercise, we use exercise to treat concussions because it helps the brain, helps the circulation in the brain, and helps the function of the brain. Improves sleep. How many of you have difficulty sleeping? Everyone can raise their hands. And it's also important in decreasing the rate of depression, which is so important. Not only just the active exercise, but with exercise, we can make it a social thing. So it's really important to maintain our social ties as we get older. So going for walks with friends or skis. I often see groups out there when I'm skiing of folks, and that really does my heart good to see that. You're hitting the benefits of exercise on many different levels when you do that. Okay, so those are kind of the broad sweep of benefits. That's what I call a magic pill. If I wanted to be able to take a pill that would do all those things, I'd take it in a heartbeat. So exercise is key. Nice thing about living in the Methow Valley is we have a large community of supports that, and supports it in ways that where we do it outside, and getting outside on a regular basis sure is nice. So for our heart health, and actually for light strength, working your heart system aerobically, going for walks is a key component to that. And I often get asked, well, how much should I train aerobically to get the maximum benefits? And a lot of you know I'm pretty cheeky in my responses to things. So usually I say, well, you should do more than you did yesterday. In that we want to have a progression with our activities if we're able. And so you can follow the 10% rule, and our bodies have about a 10% ability to tolerate increases in things, both strength and aerobically. With 10%, we adapt and we get better. When you overshoot, which we have a real knucklehead disease in the valley that happens, where we do twice as much as we're used to doing, you'll tend to react. And that's where you can develop injury or pain. So we can keep your increases to 10%. I think that can be valuable. So if you're starting with 10 minutes of walking, increase it by a minute or two, but don't be doubling it. And conversely, if you're going for 30 minutes or an hour, then, look for 10% increases occasionally. And that's how we improve in activities. So the guidelines for aerobic exercise is to do 30 minutes at a moderate pace 5 times a week. And then if you're doing vigorous activity, to do 20 minutes 3 times a week. and feel free to do more. The studies show that doing more is good and better. So you can work up to an hour, or some of you are avid hikers and will hike for much longer. Conversely, if you have an injury and you can only do 5 minutes of activity, of walking around. I have people with injuries and they can, we'll do deck walks or go out to the mailbox, and that's great. And that's fine. You can maybe try and work up to doing several of those a day and then start increasing the time. So, all of our situations are different. So that's why I'm kind of doing a broad swath here, because I see folks in both circumstances. Some of us are lucky. We picked the right parents. We've avoided some of the big injuries, and we can do great amounts of activity. Other of those pick the wrong parents or have big injuries and are, can do less, but we're still aspiring to do more. So I want to speak to both those groups today. And then in our questions, feel free to ask about, we can get more specific and drill down into that a little bit. Okay, so that brings me to strength. And strength is actually the essential fitness element. It's what everything comes from. Your aerobic endurance comes from a base of being strong. If you're stronger, you can do more aerobically. Your balance is affected by how strong you are. If you're stronger, you have much better balance. If you're weaker, you become frail, your balance decreases, and you have falls, and then you have more injuries. So strength is incredibly important. I know growing up, we didn't have as much of an emphasis on that. It was always our heart health and aerobic health, which is very important. But also I want to give equal airtime to strength because it's so important. And do you guys want the good news or the bad news here? Let's see. We'll do the bad news first. That strength declines 15% per decade after the age of 50. Oh, and it gets worse. It starts decreasing by 30% after age 70. That's the bad news. The good news is that if you strength train, that doesn't happen. You will maintain your strength. So that's really good news, but you got to work at it. It just doesn't happen. So you want to be performing, if it's very light strength and just body movements, you can do that daily. But if you're able to progress to more fatiguing strength movements, then you can do that 3 times a week. But that will support everything else that you do, and it makes everything else easier if you're stronger. So if you feel like you're getting tired, you're getting run down, well, strength not only will make you, will decrease the fatigue, but it's also the one activity that boosts your hormonal balance. We're always depleting our energy stores and our endocrine system with all the myriad of activities we do. The only thing that puts energy back in the pot is strength training. It may be curious that here I'm exerting energy and that's going to give me more energy later, but strength training does that. It's an amazing characteristic. On the for all of our Olympic skiers at that level, here they have all this vigor, all this strength and energy, but they know it's really important for them to do strength training at least twice a week. They'll do a race on a Sunday and they'll have a strength session that afternoon, because that's putting energy back into their system, and it's going to help them tolerate all the many hours of physical activity they do. So that doesn't change as we get older. It's still very important for that. Okay, so maybe now I'll talk briefly about some strength activities to do, and I'm just going to speak in very general terms. And then let's try and open it up maybe for a few questions, or Tracy, if you want to guide me in any directions we can, or Betsy, we can do that as well. So for strength training, we in my field, we don't train muscles, we train movements. So you want to think about hitting all the categories of movements, and we can get more complex or less complex. I tend to keep things pretty simple. And so you want to be able to do a squat movement. You want to, and we can make it easy or hard, all of these. You want to be doing a press movement, and that can be a pressing away this way or pressing overhead. You want to do a single leg movement, and oftentimes I'll use this as a balance movement. You also want to do a balance movement because we have to train balance. And then for, it's really common for many of us to have back pain. And so I'll do a back exercise, a core strengthening exercise. And I'll go over that today in our core tension drills that many of you have seen me teach. And I keep it simple. It's better to do the basics well than to try and get too complicated and cute with things. And strength training doesn't have to be complicated. You just have to do it. The best thing to do is being consistent over a period of time with gradual increases or changes in your program. So it's okay to vary it, but many of us find that if we get consistent with a certain time, or if you get an exercise buddy, that'll make you consistent with it. And that's maybe something we should talk about. How do we incorporate this into our lives where we can be consistent with it? Some of the general rules is if you do something first thing in the morning, it gets done. And if you have something scheduled later in the day, it tends not to get done. So doing activities right away. Having the ability to do it at home, I think, is really important. We have a great gym in town, and I love that for the social characteristic, and it adds variety and a lot heavier things that I don't have to have in the house. But you want to be able to exercise at home as well, because then you're more likely to be able to get to it. There's a social characteristic that can be employed with exercise, and that helps reinforce it as well. So either there's some group classes, or there's walking groups in the Valley, all sorts of things. And so I challenge you all to find a group that you can do something with, because that has benefits on multiple levels. And then maybe we can get some of your thoughts on what you guys do to make it happen. Yeah. So, okay. So let me go over examples of a squat, a press, single leg balance, and some tension drills here. All right. So I'll go to my extensive exercise equipment here. Can we see that? Okay, we've got a chair. So the first thing we're going to do is a squat. So with a squat, I'm going to sit in the chair. And then stand up. Starting out, a lot of you will just sit like that. You'll sit and then stand up. And you'll notice for me to sit up, I'll flex forward, keeping my back straight, and push my hips forward to stand up. To go down to the chair, I'm going to crease at the hips. I'm not going to curl. Stick my butt out as I touch the chair. Now, any of you know me, I always whine if you rest here. I would prefer if you can just touch and come up. That's more advanced. Touch and come up. Not putting any real weight there, just touch. If that's too deep, you can use a pillow, a cushion of some sort. You don't have to go as far. So that can be very helpful. Okay. Now,
Pete, are you engaging your core as you do that also to kind of support your back?
so let's talk about that. We just don't want to be a bowl of jello here. But how do we tighten it up? People get really tricky with it, and then I think that's hard to follow through with. So I do something very simple. I take my two thumbs, I stick them in the sides, then I push out. Everyone do that for me. So stick your thumbs in. So not in front, it's just off to the side a little bit. And then you're going to squeeze and you're going to push your thumbs out. It's not pooching out in front. It's kind of going at an angle. You'll actually flatten out a little bit in front as you do that. Can everyone do that? Just nod your head if that's working for you. Okay, great. Another advanced level is to get our lats tightened up too, and that'll stiffen up everything. Our lats are these muscles from the side, and they come and attach into our back. It's not something we normally tighten up, but if I push my shoulders down, I'll get really tight here, like that. It's what ballet dancers do to get that nice platform as they're doing things, or ballroom dancers. So I will do my lats, my core, and I can even do my glutes. Now, when you sit, you have to then relax your hips, but I can still keep tight all along in here as I sit down. And that's a common refrain that we use when we do all activities. So for a press, for an overhead press, I'll tighten my core, my lats. I'll just pretend I have some weights. I can press them up overhead and come back down. Now, as I come back down, I don't stick my elbows out. I try to keep my forearms vertical. So everyone do that. Let's do 5 overhead presses, keeping our core tight. So first, elbows or fists are right here. Tighten your core and your lats. No one's slumping now. So that's awesome. Shoulders are down. Okay, then we press up, then power down, like you're pulling something down with some tension. So this can be actually vigorous. That's 2. 3, notice how I'm not letting my elbows, as I come down, I'm keeping my elbows kind of tucked in. I'm losing count. Is that 4? Or is that 2? You better keep me honest.
I think we're at almost 5.
I think we're at 5. And you notice how I try to get my arms as far vertical as possible, and don't have them out. Don't get lazy and have them out in front. Make sure they're overhead. We don't want to lose the ability to go overhead if we can avoid it. Those rotator cuffs and those tears and the arthritis in our shoulders conspire to make that chronically difficult. But you get good at what you do. So we want you, if you can, to be able to go overhead. For those that are stiff, we stiffen up. I don't know if any of you have noticed this, but sometimes you stiffen up as we get a little bit older. So I'll actually lean into a wall and work on loosening that up over time. And over time, you can regain a lot of overhead activity. Of course, be in mind, if something's getting too painful, then avoid it, because we can get a wearing out of our shoulders that make it really hard to do that. And I don't want to be promoting something that's too difficult for someone to do, or an injury prevents them from doing it. But if you're able to, if you don't, you'll lose it. Let's see, if you don't use it, you'll lose it. So let's all get back to doing some overhead activities if that's possible. Conversely, a press is also important to do. This is an overhead press. This is a horizontal press, push up. And you can do that from the wall. or off of a chair or from the floor. And that just is letting gravity add resistance. So I'll just a quick demo of that. I'll do it against the wall. You can use a chair. Deeper still. And then you can go from the floor.
So your elbows, weren't tucked in necessarily.
Yeah, we can, what's more important is you bring your shoulders down. Wherever your elbow's at, shoulders go down. And we don't want to do exercises being shrugged up. That can irritate the shoulders. There's advantages to having elbows, to having your hands out further and elbows out, or being, excuse me, narrowed in. And that's a case-by-case basis. Okay, so sorry, I'm losing my voice here. You guys are making me talk too much. Let's go now talk about a balance, right? We want to do balance. So let's do a single leg movement. Those of you that can. Sometimes I'll do this in a corner, so I have some walls or a chair right by me for safety. We hate it when you fall working on your balance. So make sure that you're safe when you do this. It can be really simple. I'll demonstrate just being tight with my core, picking up my knee into one leg. And then you can also swing your leg around, do toe taps around the side of you if you need to make it more difficult. So it's good to challenge yourself a little bit on this stuff. So. So again, I'll tighten up. Nice and tight. There we go, I got it. Then you can do some toe taps, just touching. You can do some swings, like you're skiing. All that's great for working on your balance. And you notice I was tight, tried to use that as an excuse to work on your core strength all the time. Because the reason we're doing that tightening up is I really don't care too much about the exercises, if truth be known. I want you to use it when you're reaching and picking up things at home. We want to reduce the amount of irritating activities to our back from 50 times a day to 10 times a day. Because every time you're reaching or picking up something unsupported, that's an irritating event for your spine. And spine injuries are really common in us as we get older. So we want to protect the spine by tightening up. And we taught you how to tighten up now, and you can do that all the time. It doesn't have to be a death squeeze, not 100%, but you can just be engaging that. And that's going to help keep the level of strain to your back down immensely because we're supporting it. So we use that during all of our exercises that we do. It's just an excuse to tighten up and train that ability to do that for when we need it during our daily activities. Okay, so that's an exercise in and of itself, is just to tighten up your core, lat, squeeze. And then you can squeeze it at 25%. Do it with me. I'm going to squeeze it now. Oh, I'm going to squeeze it 50%. It's pretty strong squeeze. Now I'm at, say, 75%. Getting a little harder to breathe. I have to breathe behind the shield, we call it. A little tougher. Back down to 50%. Oh, that's easier. 25% still engaged. And then relax. So I do anything today. This is probably the most important thing we've talked about, is how to create tension to support ourselves when we're picking up heavy things, but also protect our back during the day. So that's it. Okay, how much should I do these movements? Like if I'm doing squats, how many squats should I do? Well, if you can, let's do 5 to 10. 10 is great if we don't have much resistance. But then you're going to get stronger and you're going to need to add a little bit more. So then we can just take a rock, or in this case, a kettlebell or a plate of weight, and just add some resistance. Now that's getting more interesting. For those of you that are more advanced, we tell you, I want you doing between 5 and 10 reps, but I want it difficult enough to where you only have 2 reps in reserve, 2 reps in the pocket, where say you can do 8 reps, but 10 you really wouldn't want to do. That's heavier resistance training. And those are some guidelines we do to get people knowing how much is enough. But just starting out, I think just accomplishing the movements is the key thing here. All right, Tracy, do you think we have any questions we can start entertaining?
We do have a question from our very own wonderful Betsy Weiss. What are the cues that I am doing too much? Is daily strength training a bad thing?
Right, and I like daily strength training because strength happens on a continuum. You're still getting strength when you can do something 20 times. It's not as much strength, but as someone that's doing something they can barely do 2 times. But when sometimes because of our injuries, we don't want to have too much resistance. We want it to be pretty light, and just body weight, just moving my arms, that's strength training. But you can do that stuff daily. I've got a French friend who was just in the Valley, and he does a daily morning exercise of calisthenics, right? I'm thinking Jack LaLange. Remember Jack? Anyway, a daily activity, and that was excellent for him, and that's a very robust approach. So it doesn't have to be, I can only do it every other day. No, daily exercise is fine. How much is too much would be when you find you're too tired to do your normal routine. Maybe you need a day off. And we also have other things in our lives that interfere with that. And that's why doing it first thing in the morning, you're going to have the most energy and you won't be fatigued by your activities during the day. And you'll actually get to it.
What kind of other cues might be that, I don't know, you're irritating that joint or?
Right. Yeah, because we have discomfort and pain in our lives. There's good pain and there's bad pain. There's muscular fatigue. I'm okay with that. But if you're having sharp pain, like for the shoulder, picking something up, when it bites at you and, I can't get through that phase, that's too much. But there's a lot we can do for that. So you should talk to your physician about getting into a healthcare provider that can guide you and recover that. You can recover a lot of things with proper rehab. In a Zoom call with this many people, sometimes it's hard for me to treat each and every one of you to show you how to overcome your specific injury, but it can be done. You can regain function with time and directed effort. It's amazing. The human body is just amazing what it'll adapt to and what it can do. So I encourage you, all of you, if you have something that you've been putting off, to go ahead and talk to a healthcare professional for some guidance in that. But for bad pain that's preventing you from doing a movement, I think you should listen to that. But for discomfort, a lot of times with just discomfort, we can work our way through that. As we develop strength, the discomfort decreases, and we can get movements to become easier.
If you did want to go, to the PT, do you have to get a referral from your primary care provider first, or?
It depends on your insurance. Most Medicare, yes, you need to get a referral from your healthcare provider. Your family practice physician is great for that. So that would be the avenue for that. And then on a lower level, we have exercise classes available to teach you these movements if you're uncomfortable for that. So I know at the fitness center, we have several classes that are appropriate for teaching exercise. And if it's not associated with an injury, there are also personal trainers and other fitness professionals that can help.
Here's another one. Should I take ibuprofen if never done to relieve pain?
Vitamin I, as we call it, ibuprofen. I will stick, you can talk to your physician about if you're dealing with an injury and needing some medication support for that. There are over-the-counter guidelines for ibuprofen and NSAIDs, and which you could take. I would just caution just to follow the guidelines. We don't want people can take too much and have gut issues and other issues, and we don't want that happening.
Here's a more specific question from Byron. I'm having challenges with ankle, feet pain, and weight increases the pain. What about that?
Great question. So, because it happens not just with foot pain, but also with back pain. A lot of conditions, walking becomes difficult, but we still want to be active. So what's our solution for that? And the bike can be a really good option. I know some people, what they'll do is they'll substitute a lot of walking. They'll do some walking, but substitute a lot of it with either a outdoor bike or an inside bike, a stationary bike. And that can be helpful. There's also rowing machines that you can do that with, which people enjoy. I wouldn't recommend going out and purchasing a big piece of equipment unless you know it's something that you'll utilize. But you can do some other less weight-bearing activities. Also, skiing, classic skiing can be great because it's less impact on your feet. So that's another option that we're lucky that we have available in the Valley.
How to combine exercise with some daily activities?
Peter, I wonder if I could just supplement that question, the basic question. I'd love to have your suggestions so that we can multitask during the day and get the exercise. I had a yoga instructor several years ago who said, you use the Sonicare in the morning, takes a couple of minutes. Do you do it at night too? This is an excellent opportunity for you to do that in a chair pose, in a kind of wall sit posture as you're doing it. And I found that it was miraculous for me in strengthening my quads ready for ski season. Then I had ankle surgery last year, and I found the leg that was affected was just withered. The muscle was atrophied, and I had to build that up. So I had some specific exercises that the PT offered me, and that was very helpful. Then I checked in with the surgeon a couple of months later and said, you still need to work on your balance. And so then I switched from the chair pose to standing on one leg.
Yeah, and that's what I recommend. Yeah, so you could, while you're doing your Sonicare, actually stand on one leg. Or oftentimes I'll have, I'm having someone do some mobility, like to get their shoulder flexion back. Every time you go through that doorway, you have to stretch yourself. We'll do those tricks. Every time you're sitting in a chair, I want you to tighten your core, squeeze your core and your lats. So you're getting some core exercise throughout the day. Well, you're actually protecting your spine throughout the day. So you're using these opportunities during the day to sneak in some activity, and also reminds you to do things correctly. Although we do know that we like you fatiguing your muscles. And so that's why we get into these sets and reps. I want you to do 3 sets of 10. But you can spread that out throughout the day. So it's not this one session that you're taking 20 minutes for, but you can do your, oh, I'm gonna do my 3 sets right now, but not any other exercises. I'll leave those other exercises for later. So you can feel free to split it up if that strategy works for you. The take-home point is you still have to do it, and however you want to manage that. People get on their high horse of, oh, you need to spend all this time to warm up first. Well, a lot of times you don't. You can just go ahead and do your chair squats. You don't need to spend 5-10 minutes warming up for that. That can be helpful once we get into heavier weights, but for the lighter weights, my French friend, he just goes and starts doing his exercises to good effect.
You mentioned, lats at the doorway. Could you go over that again? I'm not sure I understood what to do when you're going through a doorway.
Oh, stretching out. So I would have someone, let's see if I can. They're going through a doorway, just go ahead and stretch their arm up if they're tight, something like that.
Yeah, so sitting in a chair, getting up and down, tightening when you're sitting, using the computer, going through the doorway. Are there some other things that are just there waiting for you to do it during the day?
Oh, it's only limited by your imagination. So you just want to figure out what you're doing a lot of during the day, and then weaving in something to that. Every time I take my dog for a walk, I take my daily medication, because I won't remember it unless I key it with something. And my dog needs to get walked every morning. He bugs me until he gets walked. So guess what? I tie my medication taking with that activity. So yeah, it works for a lot of different things.
Thanks a lot.
You bet.
Here's another question. How long does it take to build strength in bones if never done before?
Bone, so that's the process of mechanical transduction, where we stress a structure and you get this big chemical response because of that. It's a biological process, meaning it happens glacially, very, very gradually over time. And when we look at looking at bone uptake, we like to track that maybe every 6 months or over a year to see some true changes. So it's not something that I can work out. I can work my arms and I know, oh, after a week or two, I can tell I'm kind of stronger. True bone growth takes longer, because it's the muscles pulling on the bones to stimulate uptake of calcium and slow the leaching of calcium as well. So that takes time. I'm not sure I can give you an exact time on when we can say, okay, you have gotten the benefit of that. The deal is you just need to start doing
it. What's the best exercise for sciatic pain?
Ooh, great question. Sciatica. I just showed you. One of them is we want to protect the spine from shearing, which pushes the herniated disc into the nerve, which gives you pain down your sciatic nerve. So it's a back problem. There's not much wrong with your leg. It's coming out of the spine. So we want to protect the spine, and doing that core tightening will really help. The other key thing is sitting pushes the disc into the nerve. So if you're going to sit, you need to have a cushion back there so you're not slumping. right? We're all going to sit up straighter now since I'm talking about this. I will. Um, and keep our spine straighter so it doesn't push that disc into the nerve. And then practicing some extension activities, which is this motion, not that motion. So that's my quick sciatic chat.
What if it's, how can you differentiate if it's sciatica coming from your spine or an over tightened piriformis?
Yeah, the sciatic nerve does go through that. And that's a more rare occurrence. If I was a betting man, I bet that's coming from your spine. It will tighten up your hip if it's coming out of your spine, because it makes those muscles contract and you can feel like your pain's in your hip. And they're a physical therapist, we can do different tests to differentiate where it is. Regardless, you need spine help, spine support, even if it's coming out of your hip. And then to chase this down, you need to talk to a professional.
Yeah. What do you think of the desks that are walking machines too?
Oh, like with a treadmill with a walking desk, I think that's great. And we have a lot of standing desks now, which I recommend for patients to break up all their prolonged sitting. Sitting's really rough on folks. So you need to break it up. The whole thing with COVID has pushed us to do a lot of work and all these Zoom calls, right? Tracy, you've got more Zoom calls after this. So you want to, if you can, every hour, break up your sitting. We'll recommend rolling around on a foam roll or going for a walk. But you want to break up that prolonged sitting because it's really rough on you. It's really rough on your back. It makes you more immobile, makes you more tired. So there's a lot of negative effects of that. But we've got a magic pill to use, and that's activity. So that we use activity to counter all the deleterious effects of sitting, and it does it very well.
How can I strengthen a tender hip flexor?
To strengthen your hip flexor I would probably recommend two things. You can work on picking up your knee, like in standing, what we did. You can even create a little resistance to it in sitting. I could do that. That's the hip flexor right here. You could do 10 of these, do 10. That would be strengthening that. And then we have these little blow up balls that will roll on and roll that tissue around that area and loosen it up that way. And that can help for that. It's kind of an unusual area for people to complain about being sore. So we want to know some other things as well.
Seems like cross-country skiing for the first time.
Cross-country skiing, I will guarantee you will be sore right there. Maybe for a week, depending. At start of the season, that's the classic, what gets sore.
Should you wear a back brace if constant pain from nerve pain and osteoporosis?
Yeah. So when do we want to use supports? And supports can be very helpful when we've got conditions that are difficult for us to work through. So, but I would only do it after going through a stint of therapy, because if you haven't done any therapy, you just want to do a quick fix and a back brace, that's telling me it's bad enough that you need to actually work on it and see if you can make it feel better. If you've already gone through all the work and you need some additional help, then you qualify for excuse me, a back brace. But if you're sore enough to be wanting a back brace, well, then you're sore enough to get some help, because of course, I'm a physical therapist. That's my bias, but there's a lot that I can see that we can do for that.
If you wear a brace too often, does it make your core weak?
Yeah, if you don't use it, you lose it, right? So if you're not using your core and you're relying on a brace to do that, you're gonna forget how to use your core muscles. They're gonna get weaker and not be there when you need it. So that's why we've just taught you today how to do that simple isometric that most people can do without their back getting sore. I'm not asking you to pick something or twist with it or do anything. Just learn how to turn on those muscles. That can be an extremely effective method of core strengthening. And then we have all sorts of sneaky ways to make that harder. We'll have you lie on your back and have you pick your legs up while you're keeping tight and or bridging while you're keeping your hips, your back and your tight. So we can add movement to that. But the key thing is for you to be able to turn those on, and you can. That's why you use your little thumbs. I'm doing it right now, squeezing out, and it's a great little reminder on how to engage those core muscles. And that technique we pulled from the strong men. That's how they teach themselves to keep strong enough to pick up those big atlas balls and tree trunks and things like that. But you can do it too. We won't ask you to pick up the big tree trunks, but you can turn on your core muscles the same way.
And with that turning on of the core muscles, are you just trying to keep it on all the time, or is it something that you tune in with? Like maybe you set your little timer and once an hour you do a certain,
yeah, or you pass a doorway, or anytime I sit on the toilet, oh, I'm going to squeeze my muscles as I go down. So you get good at what you do. So the more you do this, the better you're going to get at it. Everything our moms taught us is true. It's you won't remember to turn it on all the time, but if you're really comfortable doing with it, you can train it doing, okay, today I'm gonna do 5 turn on my core muscles for 20 seconds. Okay, so in that little workout you've trained yourself, but then I'm gonna pick up that dish up there in the cupboard. I'm going to tighten up first as I reach forward to go do that. So that's how you start introducing it to your daily activity. And then anytime you're picking up something from the floor, grabbing that dog dish, whatever, tighten up as you're doing it. And so you want to integrate it in with your daily activities. So it's a process. Usually pain is the great motivator for that. So if you do a movement and it's painful, you back up, go, okay, how can I change my position, my control of that movement? And maybe I can do it without pain. So then a lot of times you'll tighten up, go back to the movement. Oh, I don't have pain now. So that's extremely reinforcing. This whole thing with the shoulders coming down, when people are reaching up to grab something, oh, that hurts. Well, bring your shoulder down, tighten up your lat, and you got a more stable platform to work off of, and you can be less painful. So let pain instruct us, inform us.
I have a question, and I don't know how to use the chat.
That's okay.
So I have several compression fractures.
Uh-huh.
Are there things I shouldn't do?
Are they in your upper back or lower back?
Whole back.
The whole back. Okay. So yeah, so I would I don't want you to fall, right? Bad things happen when we fall, right? You've already done that. Yeah, check that off your list. Don't do it anymore. And picking up heavy things will tend to stress that. So I would start you with this process of just learning how to stiffen up a little bit to protect that spine as an introductory thing. And then really simple, see if we can tighten up enough and support you enough to get up out of a chair. Because I know if you have those compression fractures, that's going to be hard to do something like that. And see if we can't make that easier for you with some gentle strengthening. We'd also do other ways to strengthen your your legs without standing, just straightening your knees like that, squeezing those quad muscles. We want your legs to be as strong as possible, but we want to protect your back from a lot of load. So those are the sort of things that we like to do for that. And guided PT on that, a few sessions would also get you, some one-on-one care for that. Be good.
Thank you. Does anybody else out there? It's 9:59. Is there any other question that you don't want to put into the chat, but you can unmute and
Come on, this is a great chance to have at me. I know some of you guys.
Oh, here's one. Can exercise help arthritis?
Yeah. Remember, the muscles are your shock absorbers to your joints. And so you got to work with that, though. The joints are sort of move. But we got to exercise. So you got to be sneaky is what it is. So you're then in the mode of how can I exercise and work around my joint pain a little bit? Okay, well, isometrics are a great way of doing it. We will work above and below the point of pain. So like if I take a squat, for example, like with our knees, if I go really low, it hurts, but I can go maybe stay up high and just do it at this level. So all sorts of sneaky things we'll do to still do some exercise to get some strength. And so it can be done, and it's important to do, actually.
Pete, I have a question about the hip flexors.
Yeah.
So as a hiker and doing a lot of yoga, it seems like the more I do, the more tender that hip flexor gets. So I'm walking, hiking, snowshoeing or something every day, and it just seems to burn more.
Mm-hmm.
And so should I be doing less or just something different?
Yeah, great question. So, Barbara, a couple of things with that, right? Because there is a nerve that goes down from the back that goes to the hip flexors that can get irritated, your femoral nerve. So I'd want to think about that and screen that. But taking that aside for some of the other things that can bug you, if you're overusing your hip flexors, might mean you're weak someplace else. And if you're not doing any formal strength training, you likely are weak, believe it or not, in your hips, the other side of the hip flexors, right, and back, or your quads or your hamstrings. And so we want to make sure that you were doing some hip hinges, deadlift motions, and squats with resistance where you're fatiguing. You're not just doing all the aerobic light muscular endurance. I would guide you, because I think you're able to do some heavier loaded stuff, because that's what's going to give you true strength instead of the endurance oriented strength that you're getting with your hiking and more yoga activities. So those would be some avenues I would be kind of tempted to pursue with that. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Do I need to go and see my family doctor first about it, or can I just come into PT?
You can come into PT, or you can try it from a fitness standpoint, from an exercise class.
Okay.
That's common with all exercise classes, or even personal trainer. They're going to be doing squats and things like that. And you could tell you could try that. Or if you want a more targeted, focused approach, I would get in front of a physical therapist for that. So you got one that's going to be a little bit more general. But then if we got something that, okay, this is a functional thing that I'm getting limited in, then a PT can be great for helping with that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Well, there's lots of gratitude for you, Pete, here in the chat. We're so grateful that you've taken this time with us this morning. And I'm just, yeah, I took lots of notes, excellent suggestions. And
Well, thanks so much, everyone. As always, I get more out of it than I think anyone. So really appreciate the opportunity and great to see everyone. Big hi.
Thank you.
all right. Thanks so much, everybody, for being here. And let's keep on moving and supporting our movements. So good luck, and we'll be in touch.